One. Oh yeah. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Actuali Podcast. It's Meeting Making 101. I'm Chris.
I'm DJ.
And today we're going to cover one of the most shocking stories in our time. It's the story of Calley Means, in fact, exposing. This was a whistleblower who worked for Coca-Cola, among other large Big-Food and Big-Pharma companies as a consultant. He blows the whistle on how these industries have had an incredibly corrupting effect and deleterious outcomes for human health. The rising rate of chronic illness in the U.S. is indicative of the corrupting influence of these companies. So we're going to be covering a few interviews that he gave, some great podcasts. Go ahead and over to our very first. Hey, let's go.
This is the biggest story in the world. We are poisoning our kids at scale. It's just that simple. I believe it's almost genocidal. We're going to become a non-competitive, infertile country. We might be in the most consequential year of our lifetimes. Every system of healthcare is incentivized for us to be sick. The healthcare industry is the largest funder of mainstream media. It's the largest funder of politicians. It's the largest funder of medical research. It's the largest funder of civil rights groups. It's the largest funder of almost any institution we can think of. The pharmaceutical and healthcare industry spends 5 times more on direct political donations and lobbying than the oil industry. 95% of healthcare costs, 9 out of 10 deaths in America, are tied to foodborne illnesses, are tied to metabolic conditions. We're the only country in the world that allows thousands of additives in our food. We have an existential moment where our leadership and institutions have completely failed. We have to take decisive action to change the incentives.
Amen.
Yeah. We're in a crisis here. The word crisis is thrown out over and over and over and over again for usually when it's not actually a crisis, but we're legitimately in a crisis. And this is, I won't say it's species level crisis, but it is definitely like country civilizational level crisis.
Near species level, because so many countries are becoming developing nations. And we in the U.S. here are actually leading the pack as far as early death, chronic illness, the death of newborn children and young babies. It's actually rising dramatically in our country at the fastest rate since 1860 or something like that. So we have a shocking rates of chronic illness, obesity, cancer, so forth in our country at this time. And so now we're going to hear this gentleman, Calley Means, whistleblower, speak on how we are being poisoned at scale. Let's jump on over to this video, guys. Check this out. This is on the Aubrey Marcus podcast. Check it out. Aubrey Marcus does some great work out in the world. He's an entrepreneur who founded the company On It, which provides some great nootropics. So if you're looking for some brain health, that's the place to go. Let's jump on over.
There's just a simple economic fact. Let's not get conspiratorial. Let's not get emotional. We're being poisoned as a population at scale. And that's happening because the largest industry in the country, again, just as a statement of economic fact, makes money when we get sicker, when we get more depressed, when we get more infertile. The healthcare is the largest industry in the country. It's the fastest growing industry in the country. More mortgages when we drive through a neighborhood are paid for by the healthcare industry. More people, their dignity is tied to that industry. It's no amoeba that's built to grow. And I worked for pharma and I worked for the food industry, which we can get into. They're very connected. And the raw economic fact is that those industries are fueled by an imperative for not only for us to get sicker, but for kids to get sicker. Chronic disease is the greatest economic invention, the greatest profit maximizing invention in human history, because it's recurring revenue and we don't die right away. And we think our savior's in a pill. We live in fear. We're told to trust the system and we keep racking up pills. There's close to 5 billion prescriptions per American per year, almost 5 billion prescriptions in America. And those are almost all for chronic conditions. So unpacking that as my life's work and really unwinding what I saw early in my career working for these industries.
Yeah.
So that's a quick introduction to Calley here on Aubrey Marcus's podcast, Poisoned at Skill. And now we're going to learn a little bit more about Calley's history and his sister, Dr. Calley Means' history as well.
Yeah, well, okay, let that sit in though.
Really
How
let
much
that sink in, yeah.
medication that we're taking in per year. And, it's popular to, like, condemn the capitalist, but nobody's condemning these capitalists. Like, for real, though. Let's just be consistent.
Truth.
Like,
Yeah, I hear that. So let's roll on over, guys.
So I went to Stanford, studied economics, went into politics, worked for the pharma industry. My sister went to Stanford Med School, was a surgeon, top of her class, top of her residency. That was what success was. And we were big defenders of the system. My sister was very formative for her, very formative for me. 11 years into training. So she's worked at the NIH, top of her Stanford Medical School class, as I said, president of her Stanford class, all the credentials, right? She's at the top of the game. And she realizes the patient passed out before her who had a sinusitis. So the sinuses were so inflamed, she had to put that patient under and cut out the remnants of the sinus infection. She realized that patient was under her knife 6 months before. And then she looked at the charts and it was 50 pages of charts, diabetes, heart disease, depression, kidney issues, all the issues. She didn't even think ever to ask the other doctor. She didn't speak to those doctors. And she realized 11 years into training, she didn't actually understand why that patient had inflammation. And she thought it was her fault at first, but then she started tracing the incentives. And she started realizing that at Stanford Medical School, not one class, not one lecture was on nutrition. And actually tracing her course notes, 90% of the lectures, 90% of her course load was in pharmacology. And then she traced a little bit more, and more than 50% of Stanford Medical School's funding touches pharma in some way. So she realized 11 years out, not as an evil person, but she realized she was in this system that is basically indoctrinated her to cut open that patient. But nobody, like zero, from the medical schools to her boss at the hospital, the pharma companies, everyone had plausible deniability from asking why those patients were sick in front of her. And she abruptly left the system.
yeah, well, good on her.
Yeah,
For real.
they actually wrote a book together, which I'm going to introduce at some point in the podcast here, but it's called Good Energy by Calley, MD, Calley Means, and Calley. Wow. I'm looking forward to reading that one, actually.
Our, the experts that should know what's going on with us aren't being taught about a whole other side of medicine. Like, it's like
preventative care.
Well, it's like
functional medicine.
It's like, you fall down and you scrape your knee and you go to the doctor and they're like, man, doctor, like, what's wrong with me? You're thinking maybe something's broken or whatever. And they're like, well, you got a scraped knee. Okay, well, maybe you don't remember what happened and how you got the scraped knee. There's like, well, no, but it's a scraped knee, not the fact that you don't remember that you got a scraped knee, which would be maybe you're demented, maybe you have dementia. But no, they don't go down. It's just like, okay, well, you've got this thing. In the case of his sister, it's, swelling of the nasal tissue and the nasal passages because of infection, which could be from, different foods causing inflammation or,
it's always due to inflammation.
Yeah,
Always.
so
all underlying diseases are due to inflammation in the body from something.
well, and
The things that we can do, sleep, exercise, eat well, are the number one ways that we can prevent ourselves from having chronic illness. But we end up waiting too long or being fed unhealthy food.
Our experts aren't being told that.
They're not even being.
You got some hippies on the internet teaching you.
They're
that,
only
telling
taught
you
to
this.
treat the symptoms and to sell more pills for Big Pharma at this point.
Well,
And
what
so
what pill
covers
works?
that.
What pill works for whatever the thing, opposed to what's the underlying cause?
Right. Exactly. So now we're going to learn about what really inspired Calley to get into this, and sadly it was due to the death of his mother. Let's jump on over to. Now, oops, actually, that inadvertently. back to that.
And we're getting back to it. But yeah, so, that whole, the fallacy about, so what is it, appeal to authority? What if your authorities aren't aware or educated? It's like, oh, well, yeah, I went to some big highfalutin school. They taught me this, that, or the other. Okay. Well, in this case, we see that, doctors, the people you should be trusting, are not educated on the first fundamental of human health is, what you take in.
Mm-hmm.
The human body is what you take in and what you put out, right?
That's
So it'd be like, what are you taking in? And, we don't live off of pharmaceuticals. They're not nutrients. They're not what makes it, well, yet.
Here we go. I got it.
But yeah, like, rant. But for real, though, that's disturbing.
Deeply. All right, transitioning over, guys.
He abruptly left the system. This all came together for me with my mom. It was the classic American story. So my mom, for 40 years, like the majority of Americans, is just racking up those chronic diseases. I was born at 12 pounds. And
you were born at 12
I was born
pounds?
at 12
Big.
pounds.
Heavy boy.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's what everyone said. And it was high fives.
Heavyweight infant.
It was high fives. And it was, she like, the hospital like gave her like a fake award. They were excited. It was like, congratulations from the doctors.
Young Tyson Fury.
Yeah. And only later, decades later, did my sister and I realize that it's called fetal melanoma. It's actually a condition.
Oh, wow.
And it's actually a blaring warning sign that the mom has metabolic dysfunction.
Really?
It's a huge warning sign if you're much over 9 pounds. So no warning on that. Had trouble losing weight, that's normal. Had high cholesterol, statin. Had high blood sugar, metformin. Had high blood pressure, ACE inhibitor. So all these appointments throughout the next 40 years after I was born, it was just one chronic condition after the next, no problem, here's a pill. And actually, at 71 years old in early 2021, she was complimented by her doctor on being healthy. On 5 medications, she was actually lower on the medication spectrum than an average 70-year-old.
Wow.
And then she's hiking. She feels a pain in her stomach. She goes and gets a scan at Stanford Hospital, and she gets a text a day later saying stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She's going to die in a couple weeks. And that is the story of the American patient, right? She processed hundreds of thousands, if not, well over $1 million in fees and doctor's appointments and pharmaceutical treatments and interventions over that, normal trajectory of chronic condition. And instead of just one time, right, if a doctor actually explained to her what the high cholesterol actually means, what's happening for the cells inside of her bodies, what obesity actually means, what high blood pressure actually means, not once, even, a well-educated family, a daughter who's a doctor, not once did anyone sit her down and actually explain that these are all the same things. They're all underlying metabolic dysfunction. And then, as you said, we've got all these chronic diseases exploding. And, when Dr. Fauci took
Yeah. So just to take a quick break there, though, what a familiar and distressing story. Like we can all, I'm sure, think of family members immediately that we've seen going through these kinds of things. Most of our parents are probably on statins. It's one of the most highly prescribed things on the planet.
Most of my friends are on statins. Come on. Let's be
200
real.
million new prescriptions for statins every year.
Unreal.
And that was just one of several chronic issues that she had that the doctors just kept saying it's normal. So let's go on, though. So he just brought up Dr. Fauci.
We've got all these chronic diseases exploding. And, when Dr. Fauci took over basically responsibility for chronic conditions, he had a lot of purview over that starting in 1980. Our rate was under 10%. Now it's 65% of the American people have a chronic condition.
10% to 65%.
94% of us are metabolic dysfunctional. So chronic disease rates, particularly among kids, of course, are exploding. But it's also, as you said, then the big part is those are leading to the deadly things. And life expectancy in America is declining for the most sustained period since 1860. We are actually dramatically decreasing right now in life expectancy because these things are leading to the heart disease. They're leading to the cancers. They're leading to the Alzheimer's, which is exploding. So the little things are adding up to the big things, and that's then racking up a lot of money.
Racking up a lot of money, and there is the motivation.
If I remember correctly, heart disease during COVID was killing more people than COVID. We freaked out about COVID,
Go figure.
but not heart disease. And that's every year. That's year on year on year. That's like a COVID every year. Just heart disease, right? We didn't have this before. You know, like President Kennedy, he warned about this, you know, and I think he was the guy that really like pushed forward the whole what was it, the presidential fitness requirement or whatever that was that we all had
That's
to
right.
do in school. And you know, he didn't want us to all turn into a bunch of fat bodies because, well, maybe he saw something happening, maybe with, you know,
You know
what's
that health creates happiness. It creates motivated, inspired, innovative individuals. It puts us in our optimal state. We wanted a healthy-minded and healthy-bodied nation.
Well, and you know, he was also rubbing shoulders with the highest elites of people, and you know, those who the highest level of decadence. I'm sure he's seen what happens to people when they get to that level. They get fat, they get ugly, they get lazy, they get complacent. And then
Right.
we're talking about, you know, not too long after the war to end all wars, and then, well, some more wars that happened. Like, well, if you don't have a healthy population, you can't defend yourself as a nation either.
Right.
So hey, the militaristically minded people, you need to, you know, start paying attention to this and speaking out if you can, because well, we won't be able to defend ourselves. We'll be too fat to wield all those guns we have in this country.
Well, when you're in good shape, it's easier to learn. It's easier to get a lot of work done before you become stressed out or tired. And it's also, you know, this is the body is the temple. You know, there's a deep spiritual reason to take good care of ourselves.
Yeah, well, you literally think better when you're moving around and you're more, you know, particularly like young men, like, you know, like kids in school. Well, if you've got a delinquent kid, like a delinquent male kid, go let him, you know, run around outside and be a little hooligan for a little while until he gets a little tired and bring him back in. You know, I actually see that they become better students when they're allowed to do that.
Yes, yeah, sitting
know.
kids down for 7 hours straight with one little break where they get to run around for 20 minutes outside is just not the way, especially for little boys, which are crazy and like, all this hyperactivity kinds of diagnoses. I mean, I think that's just kids. I think that's normal. I think that's probably a good thing if you have a kid that's really interested in a lot of stuff and has trouble focusing. All he has to learn is focus. And maybe part of the reason he is so hyperactive is because of the excessive amounts of carbs, sugars that we are taking in.
Yeah, we'll get into that. We
will definitely
we
get
got
into
some
that.
data to back that up.
Yeah, and so now we're going to jump on over to an interview with the nephew of John F. Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and his interview with Calley Means. Let's jump on over to this. This is on the RFK podcast.
Yeah, so there's no definition, Robert, in any laws, despite pharma's best efforts, that medicine is a pill developed by Pfizer. Medicine is what a doctor and a patient determine what can prevent or reverse a condition. And there's significant case law since the 1950s that if food is medically recommended, if supplementation, you know, for instance, omega-3s, DHA, 1,000 milligrams has been shown to be more effective than an SSRI in reversing depression. So if you tie
There's something of note right there. Did y'all hear that?
if supplementation, you know, for instance, omega-3s, DHA, 1,000 milligrams has been shown to be more effective than an SSRI in reversing depression. So if you tie a supplement intervention, vitamin D deficiency, to
Hard to
many
get those,
metabolic
too.
disorders, or if you can tie exercise, which exercise, as Mark Hyman has said, is if you put in a pill, it'd be a blockbuster. You can actually,
Yeah,
the doctors actually can work with patients and write down an intervention. And with that doctor's note, that you can then use your medically advantaged dollars instead of waiting to get sick and buying drugs, which those funds are often used for. You can actually buy your gym membership. You can actually buy supplemental food. You can buy supplements. Again, if you work with your doctor. My sister, my best friend, Stanford Med School.
And you could deduct your gym membership.
You can, the IRS is explicit, has been explicit about this. If medically recommended, they've said explicitly, and this is deep in their documents, IRS publication 502, that you can use HSA, FSA funds for your gym membership if a doctor can substantiate that exercise can help prevent or reverse a condition. So
Wait,
this is
subsidizing
you
healthy
don't know about
lifestyle?
it. No, nobody knows about this. We've been evangelizing this. There's nothing up until today that said medicine is a synthetic pill or injection. As we both know, food and exercise is medicine. And
Yes, yes, yes.
Dude, imagine
Up
that.
until today, though, he notes, so we'll get into that as well.
Imagine if the government subsidized, like healthy, like if your doctor says like you need to eat more greens and more healthy proteins and all that stuff, you could go to the grocery store with the doctor's note and they could take off a certain percentage that then the government subsidizes and pays back into the grocery store so they don't go broke. That'd be great. But you know what we are subsidizing? We're subsidizing oils. We're subsidizing soy, rapeseed oil, which is your canola, corn oil. We're subsidizing highly processed grains, which it seems to be the only thing that, when people, like, according to the guidelines of what you should eat is processed grain, people can always eat enough processed
We've
grain.
been subsidizing the sugar industry for decades to the
Yeah.
tune of billions. Any sugary product would be a lot more expensive if it was not for really our tax dollars paying for subsidizing these different industries to encourage them to make more sugary products.
We could get gym memberships almost free and like all the healthy food a lot cheaper if
Yeah.
we just flipped it the other way around.
Another thing of note is that most of the sugar that we use comes from, I believe, Haiti, where to this day they're still using like virtually modern day slaves getting paid pittance, I think a few dollars a day or something like that to harvest all of the sugar cane that goes
Yeah.
into the foods that we
And
eat.
that's our sugar. Whereas like I would venture to say that most of the sugar that we consume is high fructose corn syrup, which comes from corn. So every time you drive by a
Mhm.
cornfield,
Oh,
and you're
that's
like,
right.
oh,
Yeah,
all that
yeah, yeah.
corn in
There's that
abundance.
too.
It's either going towards animal feed, processed down corn product, or high fructose corn syrup.
HFC is one of the most unhealthy things you can possibly put in your body. And I know, and as soon as I said that, I remember how touchy, how personal our food intake is for us. Like when you start talking about diet with people, it's one of the greatest ways to turn off a conversation because people are not comfortable facing these things or just thinking about even changing these kinds of lifestyle habits. It's really hard to change behavior. It's even hard for us to think about those things that we prefer doing and not doing them anymore. It's a hard thing for us to approach. So,
Oh yeah,
I
no.
understand that this is difficult for us all to face. I mean, I have my own issues with healthcare. I could do much better at sleeping and exercising more and so forth.
Well, I just ate a crap sandwich from Sheetz. It was, Lebanon bologna and is it cheese on white bread sandwich?
Oh,
'Cause-
boy.
because
That's a whole other layer of suspense to this episode.
yeah,
doesn't it?
well, I'm not preaching from the high hill and some yogi. I am a fat.
No,
I get
we're
it, I
we're
get it,
learning
but
together here, right? We're figuring this stuff out together.
if it
It's
was
the best
only
way
our
to do it.
choices, but it's all the guidelines and everything that's set up from us from where we were a little kid. You're supposed to have this, that, or the other. We all know right now that the original food pyramid's a bunch of crap. That's why they had to change it. Now they're trying to like change it to the plate and all that stuff. And
Speaking of healthier options, though, if you're looking for a healthy place to eat,
yeah, Spice
check
Connection.
out Spice Connection in Martinsburg, West Virginia. Spice Connection is an Indian restaurant run by some great family friends of mine. Amazing people. That's chef, and that's his pet tiger, Jackie. Really had a pet tiger when he was a kid in India, and it saved his life a few times, according to him. So I don't know if it's a life of python or not. I used to think it was, but the more he told the stories, the more I realized I think he's actually telling the truth about this.
Oh, was it lentils and milk?
But
is
anyway,
what they
some
fed
of
him?
the best food you've ever tasted in your life is Indian food. If I know some people don't like curries, but there's other things you can try.
Yo, get yourself a
tandoori chicken
vindaloo, yo.
or
Ugh.
butter chicken or something. But man, some of the greatest and healthiest food around. So check it out if you're in the DC metro area. This guy's amazing, legendary. So let's jump back over now to the RFK podcast, where Calley is now going to talk a little bit more about the IRS and how they are changing the guideline to state that food is not medicine, even though medicine technically,
Wait,
definitionally is anything that can help improve your health.
Wait, the IRS is telling us what food and what medicine are? What business do they have telling us? Oh, the taxes, how they tax things.
I know.
Never mind.
I don't know, but
Never mind.
the IRS union, labor union, did just endorse Kamala Harris, didn't they?
Well, yeah,
It's a great
her
endorsement to have,
administration increased them
the
by like
IRS.
how many tens of
Everyone
thousands,
loves the IRS.
and then gave them a bunch of guns.
Yeah. So let's go on.
Yeah,
Let's
sorry,
go on.
that's another
episode.
episode, but yeah.
Rolling.
Just to give some inside baseball, a literal pharmaceutical lobbyist who was upset with what we were doing tipped off the IRS, and the IRS called the Washington Post. And this will be out by the time this podcast is out. And they said, quote, "Food is not medicine." They said that in very rare cases that food and supplements can be appropriate medicine. This is absolutely a negligent comment. This is in a context where, as I said, 80% of Americans are obese or overweight, where Ozempic is on track to be the most prescribed drug in America, where 40+% of men over 40 are on a statin, where 25% of women are on an SSRI. The IRS, for the first time I can find in its history, says food is not medicine. So they're commenting on what a doctor can and should recommend to their patient for the reversal of our chronic disease crisis. And they actually, shockingly, Robert, they commented on the scale of the recommendations. They actually said supplementation, vitamin D, omega-3s, et cetera, things we're very deficient in, can only be made medically in, quote, rare cases. So let's be just really clear what the IRS is saying. They are saying that it is easier and clearer and less scrutiny if you're obese to get a prescription for Ozempic than to work with your doctor to get a detailed food, supplement, exercise plan and use your own money, your tax advantage money, with a doctor recommendation, with a doctor's plan. Use that money, as has been elucidated over decades of case law, use that money for root cause interventions. And I want to be really clear here. The operationalization, the operationalizing of your policies, to me, is the money. The American people are not trying to be sicker, fat, or more depressed, more infertile. As I saw working for food and pharma, we're pushing people into that system. We're pushing trillions of dollars of incentives for kids to eat poisonous food, eventually get sick, and then get on a pharmaceutical treadmill. Where the rubber hits the road, what's disruptive is steering medical dollars to actually helping people be healthy, exercise, food, supplements. There was that road in the HSA, FSA policies. And the second that starts getting attention, through my work on Tucker and evangelizing that you can actually use your medical dollars for root cause metabolic items, the IRS is not speaking about the overprescription of Ozempic or statins or SSRIs. They have made a statement today, quote, "Food is not medicine."
Food is not medicine. So they have been allowing people to write off medical care for years, but now they don't like the idea of people using healthy diets as a way of maintaining good health. So food is not medicine anymore, according to the IRS.
Yeah, well,
Thanks, IRS.
but like, who are they? Who are they to say, like, and why should it matter that the IRS, like, it's a freaking product. We're selling a product. If there's a tax on, well, I guess it is the tax on the product, right?
Yeah.
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 Overtax your food, undertax, and what's the IRS's cut? How does the IRS get its money?
Right.
Like, is there any other, like, backdoor avenues that the IRS gets money that isn't just, like, I guess, doled out by Congress? Like, how are they, like, why do they care? Like, shouldn't the IRS only really...
Because too many people were tapping into it for good health care, and somebody has connections that's in a high place in the IRS, maybe with Big-Pharma or Big-Food. There's some conflicting interest at play here.
I guess we got to go to our Congress people and figure out who is getting what money from what companies, because the IRS does what Congress wants.
What is the motivation here? Yeah.
Yeah.
Why is this happening? Food is not medicine.
Yeah, whatever.
Where do you think medicine comes from?
I mean, there's so many things we
comes
eat,
from
like
organics that we modify.
just your spices, like thyme. Thyme has a bunch of medicinal purposes within it. Oh, that tea that you drink is also medicinal. You like that Bragg's nutritional yeast. That's medicinal. It's got a bunch.
Absolutely.
It's a supplement, but why should we have to prove that it's supplemental or whatever? It's like, oh well, you want money, or you want to spend less money on that product because it's going to help you in the long run. It's like, okay, fine, yes, let's do that. Why do we have to? You know what Ozempic does to you? look up the side effects of Ozempic. Horrible.
You have to stay on it for the rest of your life. And it's actually the most expensive medicine, I believe, that has ever been produced in history.
Yeah,
and we're going to be subsidizing that. They want to get kids on this stuff, start them on it for a lifetime of Ozempic.
And I'm not going
Because
to.
obesity is just another illness that just happens.
And I'm not going
to.
to.
hormones.
I'm not going to
That's
crap
the only
on.
reason.
I'm not going to crap on people who actually like are further along within their like diabetes and they're really heavily overweight and it's like something that's like so that you don't die.
Right, of course.
Like,
of
but
course.
that's what it's for.
No, and we're not saying that we're completely against modern
No.
medicine.
No, not at
there's
all,
certainly emergency cases where you do need it, but of course, preventative medicine that stops us from getting into chronic illness situations in the first place would, of course, be preferable, I think, for us all.
Yeah.
So let's move on. Jumping back.
It'd be a lot cheaper.
They told the Washington Post specifically, they've actually, I've heard that they said, quote, that when a benefit gets out, it's hard to take back in. And they were complaining that all these folks are reimbursing gym memberships, and it's just an explosion of people getting medical dollars for exercise. They said it's happening way too fast. Now, the fact that people hear about this, that they can work with their doctor for an exercise prescription and more people are doing it, is not a statement on us. It's a statement on the broken system. It's a statement, frankly, on the moral failure of doctors who have 66% of adults and 33% of teens coming into their office with prediabetes, and they're prescribing pills. 33% of failure of doctors who have 66% of adults and 33% of teens coming into their office with prediabetes.
66% of adults.
That's 2/3 of adults, so that's 2 out of 3 adults, and that's 1/3 of teens.
33% of teens.
I was a fat kid when I was a teen, but I was the exception. I don't remember too many fat kids in my school, and I don't remember hardly any that had like pre-diabetes. There was a few that had the whatever genetic diabetes that you start out with, and there's ain't nothing you could do about it. But okay, so let that sink in. Teens will be adults. 1/3 of those teens are starting out as diabetic, obese adults. And 2/3 of adults already existing are obese.
So this is the real epidemic. Heart disease is the number one killer in the U.S. and obesity, I believe, is the number one cause of heart disease.
And cancer altogether is sneaking up there, but that's also comorbidity with eating crap, living in crap, being exposed to crap. Some cancers you only get when you're exposed to like really rare stuff.
Yeah.
Other cancers are when you're exposed to the most common stuff over and over and over and over and over and over and over again.
Love yourselves, fam. Got to take better care of ourselves. This is definitely not to diss anybody that has any kind of health issue, that's overweight or anything like that. This is coming from a place of care and encouragement. So right along with us here, guys. We got to face this stuff. We got to make this world a better place, and the only way we can do that, most assuredly, is to do so from the inside out, beginning with each one of our own selves. How can we be the best example of what we wish to see in this world?
It's just disturbing.
It is, man. It's really disturbing. I mean, researching for this episode, it pissed me off a couple times where I was just really upset how far we've let this go. But yeah, so let's continue on there, because that point on the moral failing of doctors is real. So now we're gonna learn about more about how insurance and big pharma make money off of this, because health insurance actually does make money off of our chronic illness by being able to increase our premiums. That's what they've been doing for a long time. So gonna be known that now. Oh, let's go.
I was trying to figure this out at one point because I was trying to meet with insurance executives and say, look, I can show you that these particular medical interventions, certain of the vaccines, were actually causing higher costs in the long run, and that the insurance companies were incentivizing people to take them. And I went to them with data, and an insurance executive said to me, listen, the truth, because I thought naively that insurance companies would make more money if people were if their clients were healthier. They'd have to pay less costs. And I thought this is the one industry that could save us from pharma. because pharma, of course, obviously wants us all sick. The regulatory agencies want us all sick because they get more powerful. But you'd think the insurance industry would be counterbalance that because they have to pay more money when people get sick. And this insurance executive said to me, he said, listen, we get richer the sicker people are. And he said, I said, how is that possible? And he said, well, if you're Lloyd's of London and you insure against shipwrecks, is it better for you if there's one shipwreck a year, or is it better for you if there's 500 shipwrecks a year?
There it is.
And I said, one. He said, no, it's 500. Because they're making money on the premiums and on the friction. Yeah. And the more catastrophes there are, the more are paid in premiums into that system. And that's where they make their money. So it's actually better for the insurance industry that all of our kids are sick. And that's one of the, contributors.
Oh, so now we're getting a little bit of insight into why R.F. Kennedy has been blacklisted by the media and by, of course, political parties such as the Democratic Party, which he had to leave.
Yeah. Well,
over.
So he mentioned that he did, initially think that, okay, well, the insurance companies would be a stopgap against, the big pharma companies making people more and more unhealthy because, well, if you have to pay out more for insurance, you'd make less. But as it turns out, they actually make way more money on, your premiums and all the other little charges that they get you with and all the other little things.
That was a smart move by him because, big pharma is massive. It's such a giant behemoth that you need an equally sized or a greater behemoth to challenge it. And so he turns to the health industry thinking that that might be a way, and then finds out the disappointing news that indeed, of course, if there's more people sick, you're going to have more people paying higher premiums.
And then yet you got customers for life. You're going to have, you need a more expansive plan because, maybe your insurer opened up opportunities for the new illnesses that are coming up and new medications that are coming up and stuff, or maybe they took away some covering, their coverage for other issues. And that could be a whole series on like how insurance has gone because insurance isn't just a free market phenomenon. The government messes with it too. And ever since we've gotten they call it Obamacare is the colloquial term. Whatever the actual term is, that compounded issues on top of it as well, because now you have the state coming in and saying, well, you have to do this and you have to do this to meet up to our guidelines, and you have to do this and you have to play ball because we won, and we're going to instate what we put, and if you don't do it, you're out. And that's not the big pharma people hearing that. It's the small little hospitals and doctors' offices and stuff. If they don't play ball, they're gone.
Yeah.
Big pharma don't care about who your doctor is. No. There'll always be a doctor to push the pills.
Right. Yeah. They get kickbacks. They get bonuses. There's always going to be new guys coming along willing to do that. Now we're going to hear how this has affected pediatrics, children's health.
This is just a plain statement of economic fact. The best possible thing economically for the pharmaceutical industry is for a kid to get metabolically unhealthy and get metabolically unhealthy early, because then you've got them, they're popping out statins like crazy now in high schools. They're popping out SSRIs like crazy. They're popping out Adderall like crazy. Now, of course, the American Academy of Pediatrics, we can get more into this, but the American Academy of Pediatrics is aggressively saying that Ozempic needs to be the frontline defense for 12-year-olds. That not after dietary.
That is a critical organization.
Yeah,
the American Academy of Pediatrics. Because doctors act.
It's true, but I mean, RFK just does not give a f. He
but it is
says it.
Why are we giving kids Ozempic?
Why? It's a really good question.
Well, they're supposed to be building muscle mass, and Ozempic kills muscle mass.
Yeah.
So and I think that might be mentioned in here, but that's a fact. That's why you get the Ozempic face, is because the muscle mass in your face deteriorates as well.
God. That's right. So, it does kill muscle mass as well. I did see that. And do we have a clip of that in this episode?
It's probably somewhere in this clip. But
okay,
right. And we're doing it to kids. Why do we keep targeting kids for all this weird stuff?
Mm-hmm.
Aren't kids supposed to be the future?
Oh, you start them early. You got a customer for life, man.
Yeah, right.
This is the most profitable industry known to man now, apparently. Challenging even the profit of war. So yeah, let's jump on back here and let them continue.
Of pediatrics, because doctors actually believe them, so they're extremely dangerous, and the doctors don't know that they just work for the pharmaceutical companies and
It's
they
a
work
huge-
for the food industry.
American Academy of Pediatrics talking about here.
And
It's a huge
explain
problem.
explain how that works.
Well, I'll take it to when I was an early in my career consultant for the food and pharma industry. The American Academy of Pediatrics actually did partnerships with Coke. You wouldn't even believe this, but the American Diabetes Association took millions of dollars from Coke. I helped funnel it.
I helped funnel
So,
it. This is what he blew the whistle on. He worked for Coca-Cola as a
Yeah.
consultant, and they hired him to appeal to like diabetics organizations, the NAACP, and so on, so that they could sell more of their sugary product.
Yeah, Ninja Bat in the comments. He's back in the comments saying Ninja Bat.
Hey, what's up, Ninja Bat?
Yeah, he mentioned that the food producers did studies on addictive substances, just like cigarette companies
That's
did,
right.
to make food sell more.
Exactly.
So this is the same thing. That's Coca-Cola. You want to look at big food. There ain't no bigger name than Coca-Cola, right? Maybe like Chiquita Banana or something like that, but still.
Great point, Ninja Bat. Thank
Yeah,
you.
so there's a lot of information that was gathered and a lot of research that was gathered about the psychology of addiction and how to use that to sell food. Why do you think the color of your cereal boxes are the way they are, and why packaging looks a certain way, and why we grow fruit to be bright in color but not so much in taste? You eat with your eyes. The taste afterwards, you just told a tomato tastes good, so you eat it. But have you ever really had a good ugly tomato that
Heirloom.
just
Yeah,
rocks your
yeah.
socks, man?
No, we're just used to tomato sauce at this point, man. Lots of sugars and salts. And
It's hard to
whatnot.
make a
It's
good
just like
tomato
base.
sauce from scratch, man.
Yeah,
Like,
right.
I'm glad I can get it in a bottle. I just want good stuff in a bottle, you know?
But, well, yeah, amen to that, though. We need more healthy offerings out there.
Yeah.
Good thing we have, companies like Whole Foods coming out there and doing that. And we need more of that, and more shopping at our local farmers markets as well. Our local farmers will greatly appreciate it, and they're happy to grow all the food that we can possibly eat. Let's jump on back.
Diabetes, which is literally million, actually did partnerships with Coke. You wouldn't even believe this, but the American Diabetes Association took millions of dollars from Coke. I helped funnel it. Diabetes, which is literally caused by the weapon of mass destruction for blood sugar issues, liquid sugar. They didn't denounce Coke. They took money from them. So these groups are pay to play, pharma subsidiaries. That'd be fine, I guess. But the problem is they have statutory authority in the United States, quasi-governmental authority, to make the standard of care. So if you're a doctor and you go against the recommendation of the American Academy of Pediatrics, you could lose your license. If you go against the guidance of the American Diabetes Association, you could lose your license.
Wow.
As Robert Lustig, a former hormone disorder leader at UCSF, has pointed out, the American Diabetes Association until 2018 did not have dietary recommendations whatsoever for diabetics as long as they took their medications. They said you can continue eating as much sugar as you want as long as you took your medications up until 2018 when they were shamed to adjust that slightly.
You can
So
keep your cookies, we
these
might have
groups
to take your foot.
fundamentally,
That's insane.
Yeah.
That's nuts. Okay.
This is why we don't commit the fallacy of, they just trust the authorities. They appeal to authority. This is why.
We have strange bedfellows situation here. These guys are partnered with the causes of inflammation and illness, telling people it's okay to keep eating those things that are causing our chronic illness as long as we keep taking the medication.
Well, hey, as long as you love yourself and also take this medication that costs 3 easy installments of $15.99 every single day for the rest of your life.
And we are kind of addicted. Like we are habitually trained to just pop a pill for everything.
Yeah.
Anxiety, obesity, whatever it is. It's just take a pill. Just take your medicine. Take your insulin.
So
Keep eating sugar.
a few weeks ago, I shared an AI film with Chris that was very much that, there's a pill for this, a pill for that. And then by the end of it, you can end up, I'm not going to ruin it, but end up trading your life for somebody else's life, and you're happy, and they'll be happy to do it too. And
That was a dark,
but
disturbing
it
video.
was very dark and disturbing. I can't remember what it was, but it was like it but this is where we're at.
We'll find
is
it and
dark-
share it with you guys at some point.
Yeah, maybe like talk about it, but it is dark and disturbing in that way that AI can kind of do. But also it was real. It was it's this circus side, it's this big circus that we're in, and oh well, I'm feeling a little weird, so I'm going to take this pill, and that one doesn't work. I'm going to take this pill, and I'm going to shovel more crap in my mouth, and I'm going to keep doing this and keep doing that, and be fine. I'll take this pill.
You remember the video for Black Hole Sun, Soundgarden?
Oh God.
If you guys, any of the audience has ever seen that video and you see the people with like that
Oh
happy
yeah,
faces, there's a lot of
yeah.
that going on in the video DJ's talking about.
Yeah, and well, here we're at, and now you don't even need to take a pill. You can get an app and have a bunch of counselors that'll tell you exactly what you want to hear, and you'll feel good in the moment. It may not work out long term, but you'll feel good in the moment, right? Because live in the moment, be yourself, find yourself in the moment, center yourself.
But do so mindlessly.
Yeah, so take this pill. It's called
Take a pill to do
it's
it.
called Moment. Adderall.
So let's go ahead and continue this clip. This is good stuff.
Are organisms of pharma, which are fundamentally incentivized for more people to get diabetes.
Let's rewind him here.
These group
Yeah.
intelligence, they said you can continue eating as much sugar as you want as long as you took your medications up until 2018 when they were shamed to adjust that slightly. So these groups fundamentally are organisms of pharma, which are fundamentally incentivized for more people to get diabetes, for more people to get heart disease, for more people to become obese, for more kids to be sick. That's just a raw statement of economic fact. And the thing we need to unwind, and I know you're going to unwind, is these groups cannot be trusted to create the standard of care. That is why, right, the first line defense for chronic conditions for kids is a prescription pad. It's not getting that kid on or incentivizing, right, or using the $4.5 trillion we spend on healthcare to actually incentivize that kid to exercise, to fix our broken food system that's jamming poison down that kid's throat and destroying their microbiome and leading, an average kid to have a 65% of their diet ultra-processed food. The American Academy of Pediatrics is not speaking out about that. They're not speaking out about the rise of ultra-processed food and, frankly, the poisoning, and I would actually call it genocide of our younger generation.
Yeah.
Actually, yeah, this is a good point to go ahead and look at.
Yeah, so that
data that DJ found for us.
Dietary guidelines.
I see it.
There you go. So there's some propaganda for you, and this is let me pull it up on my screen. Just I have it at the. Yeah. So basically, you got, they're like, eat more nutrient dense. I didn't even realize this is one of their buzzwords.
Well, they know that's a buzzword now, so they're trying to sell us on nutrient dense. So what's nutrient dense? Oh, shredded wheat, but that's that's just pure processed grains, and carbohydrates turn straight into sugars.
But look what they're comparing it against. They're comparing it against frosted shredded wheat, which I actually, if you want to go with different nutrients and calorie content, the shredded wheat actually has more going for it because of the sugar, which is an easily broken down by your body food. What do they mean by nutrient dense? They got plain low fat yogurt with fruit. So low fat, most of your nutrients are gone, and it's just sugar.
Yeah, when you're drinking skim milk, for instance, you take the fats out of it. The fats are actually the healthy part. Your brain needs lots of fats. You take the fats away, and all you're left with are milk sugars. So that's literally all that low fat or no fat yogurt is. It's literally just milk sugars, and of course, you don't want to eat yogurt with added sugars either. But
yeah, but then they put full fat at the beginning, though.
And then they put vegetable oil as nutrient dense. So seed oils are one of the great contributors to chronic health crisis. Butter is actually good for you. This is based off of like 1950s propaganda by the sugar industry that tricked people into thinking that it was fats that was causing people to gain weight, when it was actually sugars that were causing people to gain weight and get heart disease. And then people started eating margarine, which literally re-solidifies in the same form as it is in the margarine tub in your arteries.
Yeah,
it's awful for you. Leave it out. Ants won't eat it.
The thing that got me, though, was typical, not nutrient dense, is soda. Okay, it's sugar and flavoring, but I guarantee you there's more in the flavoring than sparkling water, which is nutrient. There's not nutrients in sparkling water.
There's no nutrients in sparkling water.
There's minerals, but minerals aren't nutrient. They are minerals. So the next thing, if you go to page 90 on this one, these are the government's advised what you should take in and where they registered the average intakes. And
I see.
this group right now is 2 through 4.
Yep.
So total vegetables, they're lacking in their vegetables. Okay,
Jeez, yeah.
they're getting their fruits, and this
You
is
should be eating mostly vegetables. You should be up here in vegetables.
yeah. And so then you have your total fruits, which they get because fruits are basically candy. Like that's just what they are. And then total grains. And what's interesting is
Yeah, you got to be careful with fruits because tropical fruits in particular, the way that we cultivate them nowadays, are super sugar rich.
yeah. And then you have total grains, but the next breakdown, which is on the next page when you go down. Well, hold on, stay on this real quick.
Yeah.
So the only place where you're in is grains and protein for very young children. Now let's go down. Right. Further. Yeah. So, okay, now they have a breakdown. So none of the vegetables you need, from starchy to dark green, red, orange, all that stuff. Now,
The dark green should be the highest.
well, and then also your red and orange.
And your red and orange, yeah.
Yeah, because then you have your beta carotenes and your other.
Yes. Yeah. So these should be all the way up. And your beans, peas, and lentils, that's debatable. There's a lot of lectins in legumes.
Yeah.
And lectins lead to inflammation. Some bodies can handle them better than other, and of course, everybody's going to need their own tailored dietary needs.
And so we'll go down to grains.
Starches you want to have much lower because starches turn straight to sugars.
Well, this is starchy vegetables, so go down.
Starchy, yes.
So go down. So here's whole grains. Nobody's reaching their whole grain amount.
Of course not.
But all those kids are way above the refined grain amount. And then if you get down to meat and poultry, it's good. It seems like the kids are eating as much, but that number is low. You should be eating more meats. Well, actually, at this age, probably not. You probably want more vegetable and more easy fat. Because meat and poultry. Now, let's. So those are babies. I think 9 through 13. So that's page 95. You go there. This is a good highlight on what the pubescent kid is going through, male to female. Still not eating their vegetables, not eating their fruits. Oh, but they're fine with their grains. But we'll find out that it's just all processed grains and not the whole grains.
Yep.
And then protein. What do you need when you're a kid? You need fat and you need protein.
Yep.
Particularly when you're going through puberty. So if you go down to the next page.
Fats are not making you gain weight, kids.
No.
It's the sugars.
They help you poop.
They're good for your brain.
No, on the vegetables, total vegetables, nothing. And then the breakdown, way below.
Yeah.
And then you look at total grains, whole grains, way below. And then refined grains way above. So actually the total whole grains is probably where whole grains should be.
Yeah.
As far as what we should be eating, but it's all refined grains. And if you go down to the protein.
Yeah, your total grains should be whole grains as much as possible.
And then you got the protein. It's like, well, luckily at this age, and I think this is also because.
And you don't need grains to survive. You can be fine on vegetables and meat alone.
But look how low the dosages of protein is. That's 5 ounce equivalent.
Interesting. Look at that.
Per that week.
These are the average.
Yeah,
intakes.
that's week. That's week. That's 5 ounces a week, not 5 ounces
Per
a day.
Week, yeah. Interesting.
Yeah, and so the next cohort I'd like to look at is 19 to 30, which is 110. And I'm just building a trend here. Okay, so your total grains, it's on the low side. Still, vegetables are low, fruits are low. And this is by their standards. So they're still eating way too many grains. Way too many grains, even though it's lower than... It's like, well, how can we eat that much, right?
And this is the...
But you notice, 19 through 30, the males are eating much more protein. And I wonder if that is, like a marketing effect because, you need to eat your meat and beef jerky and other stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then so go down to the breakdowns.
And guys, you can find links to all of these in the description for this video. So all of the resources.
I think this one may not be linked, but it's dietaryguidelines.gov.
I have it.
A lot of it's crap propaganda.
It's in the description, guys.
Okay, cool. It's propaganda, but by their own propaganda. So down.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh yeah, lots of sodium, and they say too much saturated fat, but it's the unsaturated fat, the seed oil crap that you got to worry about.
Oh, you're right. I might have left this one out on purpose. Because I don't want to mislead people and them be trying to follow these guidelines.
But yet again, not enough vegetables at all.
Yeah.
And then if you go down to the grains, yet again, not enough whole grains, but way too much of the refined. And this is way too much by their standards of the fine grains. Then you go down to protein foods, meat, poultry, and eggs. Men are way above their mark. which is actually probably closer to where we should be eating.
Yeah, I think the green line should be up here.
But then
somewhere.
women also need, now, mind you, like women's bodies do have different nutritional needs than men's bodies, regardless of the amount of activity. But if you can see the trends, it's just grain, processed grain, processed grain. Not enough of the nutritious, multicolored vegetables and everything you need.
Yep.
And this is from month one. And actually, a lot of kids aren't breastfeeding anymore either, and they're just getting that powdered crap that has soy protein isolate and a bunch of other crap that's put in it, opposed to what the kid actually needs. Because
the cheapest fillers they can find, and then they overprice it.
So we're not just pulling out of our butts, and the people who are worried are worried for a reason, and even by the propaganda standards, it's still worrying.
Yep. So that's from dietaryguidelines.go. I did leave this one out of the description. All the other links and resources that we use for this episode are in there, but this one I don't want you guys actually thinking that these are good dietary guidelines.
We don't participate in misinformation and disinformation here on this channel, so we're leaving the official government thing out. You guys can go find it. It's fine.
It's there. It's there to find for you all.
Yeah.
So
it's freaking disturbing, though, man.
Okay, so we're almost done with this clip here. Let's continue now with Mr. Calley Means on the RFK podcast.
They're not denouncing Coke when I worked for Coke, 12 years ago to rig the food stamp program to make Coke the #1 item bought on food stamps, SNAP, the program that 15% of lower income Americans depend on. There was not a word from the American Academy of Pediatrics on that. But now, because their main funder, or one of them, is Novo Nordisk, the most valuable company in Europe, a Danish company that is the maker of Ozempic, the weight loss cure, because they funded the American Academy of Pediatrics, they've now said again, and I can't stress this enough, the first line defense, a weekly injection for life. You are not supposed to go off of Ozempic. They are signing up 50% of 12-year-olds are overweight or obese.
Oh my God.
Right near that number.
Wait, so that's
they are
50%.
jamming
Hold on,
them
pause that real
into
quick. Yeah. So that's assigning 50% of the 1/3 of the teen population that is obese. So that's 50% of 1/3. So that's
that is diabetic.
That's 1/6. Yeah. So that's 1/6. Oh, that is diabetic. Okay.
I think.
You go back
That's
a
what
little
he was
bit.
going back. Let's go back though, because that first point that he made there. Oh my God.
and I would actually call it genocide of our younger generation.
Yeah.
They're not denouncing Coke when I worked for Coke, 12 years ago to rig the food stamp program to make Coke the #1 item bought on food stamps, SNAP, the program that 15% of lower income Americans depend on. There was not a word from the American Academy of Pediatrics on that.
I think it's actually that 50% of U.S. teens are obese and 1/3 of them have diabetes due to that. That's what he was talking about previously, talking about the 1/3 that are diabetic, and now we have half of.
But now, because their main funder, or one of them, is Novo Nordisk, the most valuable company in Europe, a Danish company that is the maker of Ozempic, the weight loss cure, because they funded the American Academy of Pediatrics, they've now said again, and I can't stress this enough, the first line defense, a weekly injection for life. You are not supposed to go off of Ozempic.
God.
They are signing up 50% of 12-year-olds are overweight or obese.
There it is.
Right near that number. They are
Overweight
jamming
or
them
obese.
into a injection
Okay,
for the
so pause it. He's actually, so what he's saying is 50% of the children that are overweight or obese are getting prescribed Ozempic.
Yes.
Not that 50%
Yes.
of children are obese.
Yeah, okay. That
One
makes more sense.
1/3 of
So
teens are obese, so
1/3 of teens are
50% of that.
obese.
So
Yeah.
1 out of 6. 1 out of 6 teenagers is
Excuse us, we're having trouble keeping up here, but yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. You got it.
Well, it's important though when we're talking about statistics and breakdowns of populations.
To make
of
sure we
people,
understand them,
because
and be clear on it.
because the numbers can lead you
Good
some weird
save.
places if
Yeah.
you get off. That's what
Yeah.
I think he's saying. If you
Okay.
guys disagree,
Well, we're
have
on
it out
our
in
way
the
to
comments.
50%. We're moving towards it at a rapid
well,
rate.
1/3 is scary.
1/3
dude.
is already incredible. That's insanely high. So let's let them finish.
rest of their life. An injection that was approved based on a 68-week study that did not take into
68
account
week.
muscle mass, which is getting depleted by this drug.
There it is.
That did not take into an injection that was approved based on a 68-week study that did not take into account muscle mass, which is getting depleted by this drug.
There it is.
A study where the panel that approved it, the FDA, was paid by Novo Nordisk itself. A study
Wow, the panel was paid for the study.
A study where the panel that approved it, the FDA, was paid by Novo Nordisk itself. A study that, with pharma as the top funder of news ads, has been unquestioned on the mainstream news.
Of course, because they are the largest funder of mainstream news media with their advertisements. So they're not talking about it on mainstream legacy news channels.
You know, this is what I help do, and this is what's happening. You know, just plainly, pharma and the healthcare industry is the top funder of politicians, the top funder of the media, the top funder of med schools, the top funder of research, the top funder of civil rights groups, the top funder of every single group that we trust. Pharma funds, and that was my big takeaway from working with them and what I'm trying to unwind. And frankly, you know,
Man, okay, so
as you
let's
take
hear
the top
that
funder
again.
of research, politicians, the top funder of the pharma and the healthcare industry is the top funder of politicians, the top funder of the media, the top funder of med schools, the top funder of research, the top funder of civil rights groups, the top funder of every single group that we trust.
Civil rights group.
Pharma funds, and that was my big takeaway from working with them and what I'm trying to unwind. And frankly,
wow, dude.
So Nova Nordisk is the company that makes Ozempic, and they have this, you know, their front page is well shot and inspirational, and the, you know, Ozempic pens and all this stuff. And, you know, if you look at their stocks, man,
Man.
it's you know, they're doing good, man.
Oh, I'm sure. That's the most expensive medication ever produced. And they want people to be on it for the rest of their lives.
What is that? They're sitting at, as of 6 p.m. today, $127.13.
Don't put
per
your
stock.
money into this company, guys.
I mean, if you want, well, I'm not a trader, but yeah.
Not going to advise.
Yeah, no, it's an evil company, but if, you know, if you're one of those types that do that kind of thing. But yeah, they're doing good. They're maybe doing, here, let's, year to date. Oh, yeah. Oh, dude.
They're doing just fine.
5 years? Oh, yeah, dude. Like, they went from, you know, like, what, $25 in stock in 2020 all the way up. Now we're 2024. They're at like 126. Oh, yeah, you would have made a lot of money. So these are the people that are paying our politicians.
Well, you can feel the temptation there already. I'm sure there's some people that trade in stocks that are like, oh, maybe I should get into that one. But think about the deal with the devil that you're making here.
Yeah, well,
and what
that's-
it's going to
that's-
do to your own health,
Yeah.
your family's health,
Morally speaking,
your friends'
don't.
children, so on and so forth. So next clip, we're going to get into how leading medical schools teach upcoming doctors that Americans are lazy. Don't even try and encourage them to have healthy lifestyles. There's so many pills that we can provide, and go on and hear what they have to say about that.
but when she traced the money, 50% of Stanford Med School's funding somehow touches pharma. At Stanford Med School, 90% of my sister's classes focused on pharmacology, not a single class on nutrition. Doctors are trained at Stanford, Casey says, from the first day of medical school. They are told that the American patients are lazy, that they're going to be addicted to their ultra-processed food, that they don't want to exercise. They're basically inoculated with this idea that their only job is to stand ready with the scalp and the prescription pad when these lazy American patients come to them, and it's inevitable that people are going to get sicker and sicker. You know, that's shameful. That's shameful. This has only happened, as you said, it's happened uniquely in America, and it's only happened in the past 50 years. The differences, as you alluded to, between what's happening in America and other countries, it's not marginal. The childhood obesity rate in Japan is 3%. It's well over 20% here, and overweight or obese, it's close to 50%. As you said, COVID was a foodborne illness. COVID preyed on our immune system. If you were metabolically healthy, you had almost a 0% chance of dying of COVID. But you and Joe Rogan and others, who got on a microphone and said, maybe we should be exercising, maybe we should be eating healthy. Leaked emails from the NIH say that you guys are enemy number one for saying that. Why?
Leaked emails from the NIH say people like RFK and Joe Rogan are enemy number one, are to be targeted and condemned and blacklisted and defamed and so on and so forth for telling the truth.
And Joe Rogan and others, who got on a microphone and said, maybe we should be exercising, maybe we should be eating healthy. Leaked emails from the NIH say that you guys are enemy number one for saying that. Why is that such a disruptive message? Why is it a disruptive message that 9 of the 10 killers of Americans are fundamentally metabolic conditions that are entirely preventable and almost entirely reversible with food and exercise? Why do we have a world where it's anti-science when that's the case, which I don't think any doctor would even disagree with when pushed, that the only scientific intervention is a shot, in this chronic disease pill because it's profitable. And that's just the point I'm really trying to make. There is a world where, and Europe does this, quite frankly, a lot more. If you're diabetic in Europe, you actually get a subsidized keto diet. We can do that here. People don't want to be sick. My mom wanted to meet her grandchildren. Fathers who are chronically getting heart disease want to walk their daughter down the aisle. Americans don't want this, but that's trained to doctors, this cynicism about the American patient, which is, again, very convenient for the system.
Yeah, Americans are just lazy. That's all that it is. There's nothing we can do to change that. Why would we want to put money into motivating people to be healthy? And it's not like it can be done. It's not like JFK was successful in that at all.
It's halfway right.
Though he was.
People are lazy, and I think that's the reason why we have such great technology and such great tools. We are lazy. And then on the negative end of it's right is, yes, Americans are lazy. We are lazy.
But that's because we've been bred and conditioned to be as such.
Well,
we don't have to
we
be lazy.
succeeded. We succeeded in actually conquering the hard things in life.
True. So
that wasn't a good
we've amassed great technology to the point where it makes our life so much easier that we can have much more lazy lifestyles, and then we get addicted to that. And it's a lot easier just to take a pill than to change your habits.
Yeah, but easier doesn't necessarily mean more fulfilling.
No, absolutely not.
Oh, and I've noticed, sorry folks, our title and our thumbnail is wrong.
No, it's not even an issue.
Yeah.
The title should not be wrong, but the thumbnail might be wrong.
The title is definitely wrong. Courage in the Time of Chaos, Part 2.
You're looking at weird. Why did it do that?
Things happen. What we're here, we're talking about Big Pharma and the man. So, but
I don't do.
Yeah, well, hey, we're trying to, and we appreciate everybody who stuck around through all this. And I know we don't necessarily cover the super cozy and comforting stuff, but
try and give you the true,
as true as we can find it.
There now we're updated.
All right.
Fixed.
Yeah, and because this stuff is real, man. Like, you want to talk about the number one, the number one issue that America is having. It isn't China. It isn't Trump or Kamala. It isn't, the world's going to come to the end because we're using too much, we're producing too much carbon dioxide. It isn't the aliens. It isn't the Illuminati. It's
literally
we've
how
succeeded
we are taking
too
care of
much
ourselves.
to the point where we've become complacent, lazy. We don't eat right anymore. We have enough technology to figure out how to hack ourselves. And we're good at convincing ourselves that it's just fine. I'll just take another pill or this new fad thing that's coming out or a quick exercise instrument I can use.
Right. And at the very root of our potential to be able to solve the many crises that we are facing as a species is our unhealthy lifestyles. That's going to affect us more than anything. If we want to see this world change, we have to take better care of ourselves and our loved ones. And that may be hard to hear, but it is the gosh darn truth, fam. And we're not shying away from that here. We really do want to change this world from the inside out most effectively as we can. So we're going to face these hard truths together. You guys are not alone in this. Now we're going to move on, learn a little bit more about the sudden mass illness that began in the 90s and begin to ramp up from there.
We did an analysis that showed that I'm most alarmed by pediatricians because, I grew up with 11 siblings. I had something like 70 first cousins on both sides of my family. And I never saw chronic disease when I was,
Right.
I never saw it in my classmates. I never saw it in my friends. And, so when I started seeing all these kids now appearing suddenly with autism, which I'd never heard of as a kid, I was raised on the spear tip of the movement for rights for people with intellectual disabilities. I worked in Special Olympics from before it was founded, from when it was still Camp Shriver. My aunt Una Shriver founded it. My cousin Anthony Shriver founded Best Buddies. I worked for 200 hours in West Home for the retarded when I was in high school. I never saw kids with autism. And then suddenly they started appearing in the mid 1990s. And then now it's, we went from 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 34. We saw food allergies suddenly appear at the same time.
Yeah, rates of autism.
Yeah.
I never saw kids with autism. And then suddenly they started appearing in the mid 1990s. And then now it's, we went from 1 in 10,000 to 1 in 34.
1 in 10,000 to 1 in 34 people, children with autism.
We saw food allergies suddenly appear.
Real quick, though, the caveat on that, though, is there also may be a discrepancy because we have opened up the umbrella of what we call autism as well.
That's
so
true.
just to be intellectually fair, that might account for it, but still, that's a huge difference.
That's going to account for some of it,
And
but
so
not
I
all
think-
of it.
I
There
think-
is something causing an increased rate
Yeah.
of autism.
Now, personally, I think, other than, just, early vaccinations and food and
Pesticides and
and
whatnot.
pesticides and the plastics and all that stuff, I also do think that having children later in life can contribute to higher rates of autism as well.
Perhaps, but people were doing
but-
that before the 1990s, and we were 1 in 50,000.
But also not nearly as much as what this is. So we're talking
no.
about multiple different things that are layering on
1 in
top of each other.
50,000 to what? 1 in 30 some odd?
Yeah, 1 in
Yeah.
30 some odd,
Yeah, so people have been having babies late for eons, and we were not seeing these rates at all of autism. Nothing near 1 in 30. It was 1 in 50,000, even when people were having babies. Let's move on here.
1 in 10,000 to 1 in 34. We saw food allergies suddenly appear at the same time. I never knew anybody with a peanut allergy, and they're in every classroom now. Autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis, juvenile diabetes, ADD, all these neurological diseases suddenly just exploded in the mid 90s. And, why? And pediatricians, about 50% of a typical pediatrician's office comes from funding comes from vaccines. Now, and it's not just
What?
from giving the shot,
Yeah.
but it's
Wait,
also
what?
Yeah.
About 50% of a typical pediatrician's office comes from funding comes from vaccines. Now, and it's not just from giving the shot, but it's also from, and this is something you point out, from the guaranteed traffic. Because when I was a kid, I went to a pediatrician when I needed stitches, which was fairly often. But that's the only time I went. But today, that traffic is guaranteed because they have to come in.
Guaranteed.
10 wellness visits, and that makes up a huge part of and they're incentivized by the insurance companies.
So yeah, we actually have some information on the schedule of vaccines from the 1940s up until 2011 to present. So 2020, I think, is the last on this. That is vaccine history development from Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. So in the 1940s, really hard to see for you guys on that screen. Apologize, it's all white on.
Zoom in a little bit.
There you go. So from the 1940s, you got your smallpox, which we don't vaccinate for because it's dead. It still comes back in small amounts. Diphtheria, tetanus, which we still get diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis. So that's your DPT. I remember getting the DPT. So okay, we'll move to the 50s, right?
Yep.
Okay, smallpox. Right now we don't do that anymore,
Added
but
polio.
and for good reason. So let's.
Keep on
Okay,
going.
so we got the measles, mumps, and rubella in the 60s, which
Yep.
that's the MMR. I got those. I got the DPTs and the MMRs, right? So that was like 6 of them. But as you keep going, let's go to the 1994. Oh, it keeps going. In 1994, 95, it keeps going. In
Whoa, whoa,
2000.
whoa. Okay, we're getting higher.
Yeah, and
Pertussis.
and these are recommended. That doesn't mean your kid's going to
HIV.
get them.
Yep,
Your
yep.
kid, if they're going to public school, is definitely going to get the MMR and the DPT.
Yes. Okay, 95 to 2000.
What-
Here's 2000.
Yeah, so okay, it's increases 2005, it's getting bigger. 2010, getting bigger. And then 2011 to present, you go down 2020 recommended, and this is childhood. So not just your DPTs and your MMRs. You got polio, you got the Hib, you got the hepatitis B, you got the varicella, you got the hepatitis A, you got the what is that, pneumococcal.
Yep.
You've got the influenza, you got the rotavirus, right? And we could,
And
go.
COVID-19 vaccines were recommended during the pandemic
yeah.
for increasingly younger age groups starting in late 2020. They were recommended for 5 to 11 in 2020, but
Yeah.
they were not recommended for those younger than 5 years of age until 2022. COVID-19 was not added to the schedule until.
Yeah, and then you get the vaccines for adolescents, and these are your boosters, right? So we got information from DPT. It's like, okay, well, you got your catch-ups, your MMR. I don't know why hepatitis B and varicella, but okay. 2005, even more. 2010, even more with your catch-ups. 2020, even more.
Yep.
And I'm not like.
And here we have to be very, very careful.
Yeah, we're not doing
giving medical.
disinformation or any of
We're
that.
not giving medical advice. We're just looking at statistics here on the amount of vaccinations.
Yeah, and these are the schedules, and this is from
Yeah.
the Children's Hospital of what was it? Philadelphia. The Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. You get mad at them for what we showed you. YouTube, don't cancel us. And we're not saying that vaccines are causing autism or anything like that. What we're saying is there is a notable increase of different vaccines that we have been giving. And then there's also a lot on here that I've seen on other schedules that have been given to kids that aren't on here as well. I think, hepatitis and all that stuff is a little funny for that. And then, influenza. Why are you giving kids? Let them get the freaking flu.
Building immunity.
You give the influenza shots to old people because they can't handle getting the flu. Why are you giving them to kids?
Money? Maybe that's
Oh,
something to do with money.
it's always money. Come on now.
AKA Mammon.
Money or depopulation or both. Well, that Mammon.
Bill Gates.
Bill Gates.
Just felt like saying his name for some. Nothing to do with what we're talking
That's
about.
okay. We've already gotten a Bill Gates in the comments.
Ah. Hey. All right, so to finish this clip out.
They're given huge bonuses if they make sure that every kid is vaccinated. And I have to think that I don't want to say pediatricians are mercenary because I think almost all pediatricians get into that job because they love children and they want to help them.
Absolutely.
But they're so blind to what's happening to this generation of kids, and none of them seem to ask the basic questions that I was asking. What the heck is happening to our children?
What in the heck?
And is
Doctors are,
Okay, that's that.
So yeah, on top of not feeding our kids the right stuff and giving them a bunch of medications, and I was going to bring up all the different medications people are on, but I just didn't have the time to bring it up. But it's a lot of medications that kids are on, like you just heard. What is it? 1/3 of teenagers are given Ozempic, or are supposed to be getting Ozempic. That's crazy.
Of those that are obese, yeah.
Well, it's half of the kids
It's-
that are obese, and 1/3 of the kids are obese. Yeah.
So, wow. So let's look at some potential solutions now Getting towards the end here, guys. We have a few more really good clips.
And thanks for sticking around,
Hang in
guys.
with us, yeah.
Yeah, this is tough stuff, but it needs to be known.
Absolutely. There's only one way to change the game, and that's to have the data. So here we go.
We have an existential event. And what's so frustrating is that this can be solved, as you point out, so quickly. If Dr. Fauci, if the president, if the head of Harvard Med School, if the head of the IRS stood at Congress and said, we must reduce ultra-processed food. We must shift spending from Band-Aids like Ozempic to food and exercise interventions. We can filter Medicaid money to diabetic folks to incentivize them to exercise, to fix our food system, to invest in regenerative agriculture, to get control of the situation where we are fundamentally poisoning kids and then profiting our largest and fastest growing industry by pilling people and jabbing them for the rest of their lives. This is not a way to build a competitive society.
Nope.
And leaders can make that statement tomorrow. And there are very straightforward policies to pass. We right now, the USDA recommends sugar to 2-year-olds, up to 10% of the diet.
That's
The
fruits.
USDA recently came out with a study funded by food companies as well, saying a child can have 91% of their diet ultra-processed food and be perfectly healthy.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
The FDA is 75% funded by pharma and fundamentally an entity that's built for the growth of pharma. These things can be unwound with the stroke of a pen, as you mentioned. We can cut pharma ads and stop being one of only 2 countries that allow pharma ads that not only allow that to impact consumers, but allow them to buy the news itself.
Did he
That's
say that
the
Big Pharma is 75% funded? Oh, I'm sorry, FDA is 75% funded by Big Pharma?
Probably, yeah. So,
Wow.
yeah. And yeah, go back a little
about
bit.
conflict of
Just
interest.
the last like 20 seconds of that rant right there.
saying a child can have 91% of their diet ultra-processed food and be perfectly healthy. The FDA is 75% funded by pharma and
75%.
fundamentally an entity that's built for the growth of pharma.
Yep.
These things can be unwound with the stroke of
can.
a pen, as you mentioned. We can cut pharma ads and stop being one of only 2 countries that allow pharma ads that not only allow that to
That's it
impact
right there.
consumers, but allow them to buy the news itself.
Make it
That's
so
the- you know-
pharma can't put up ads. So no longer is the Super Bowl brought to you by Pfizer. No longer is your biggest media brought to you by, Pfizer.
We're one of only one or 2 countries that are allowed to
Yeah.
actually have Big Pharma advertisements. Other countries actually know better. But
And-
here, man,
And y'all know that
our
this is,
politicians, our media, everybody's funded by this industry. If they make so much money, they fund everybody.
well, and it's a thing because the joke is, it's like, well, you see the commercial and it, you hear a commercial and it's just telling you all these horrible side effects and you don't even know what the medication is for.
Right.
But mention it to your doctors and maybe they can, find a spot to slot it into your regimen of little blue and brown and purple pills.
Leaky gut, sudden death.
Yeah, right. Oh, it can eat away at your perineum.
There you go.
Yeah,
Well, that sounds fun.
that's a big one that I hear nowadays. Ugh.
All right, let's go.
built for the growth of pharma. These things can be unwound with the stroke of a pen, as you mentioned. We can cut pharma ads and stop being one of only 2 countries that allow pharma ads that not only allow that to impact consumers, but allow them to buy the news itself. That's the pharma ads and the 60%, the fact that we allow that is why CNN and MSNBC and major networks have no curiosity about why 33% of young adults have prediabetes. What could possibly be a larger story than that? No curiosity.
It's why they censored any kind of dissent during COVID, because it was all about promoting the pharmaceutical narrative without question. Nobody who questioned it, all these, Jay Bhattacharya and all these extraordinary scientists who were saying, wait a minute, slow down here. This is going in the wrong direction. They were banned from television.
We would have gotten a strike from YouTube for covering this
No, for real, actually.
back then, and we might still get a strike from YouTube for this episode.
Well, just saying the word COVID at a certain period of time would have gotten you so deranked that nobody would have seen it.
That happened also on social media. People were being shadow banned. And then they started putting up the warnings. If they didn't outright just take your post down, medical misinformation. and it ended up not being misinformation. So much of the things that were being claimed to be misinformation were actually found out to be true later on.
or at least closer to the truth than not. Like
Yeah.
ivermectin was one of those words. It's like, well, ivermectin, yes, they put it in horse paste, but it's an anti-parasitic. You can put it in your eyes to get rid of
It
river blindness,
creator
but you
of
can also use it for
ivermectin
viral.
won the Nobel Peace Prize. It has been used billions of times and saved millions and millions of human beings' lives from parasites. It also happens to have an interesting effect on COVID. And it's cheap
Yeah.
and incredibly cheap, in fact, and it's been used for like over 50 years, so it's proven, known to be safe long term. But who's going to make money off of that?
But isn't it funny though? Like, so using ivermectin for COVID would be like an off-label usage, which we do all the time. They're like, no, that was terrible. No, you can't say that. That was terrible. But Ozempic being used for just being a little overweight, and I don't mean like having a lot of issues, but just being overweight, like it's being used right now, is an off-label usage. But we're all down with that.
Yeah, right.
So like, where's the consistency?
So let's.
I don't know. I'm
Where
just
is the
ranting at this point.
consistency?
I'm just mad at
So
this point.
now we're going to get into our next clip, guys, and we're
Prepare
going
to
to
be
look
more
at
mad.
functional medicine coach, Dr. Sandy Scheinbaum, and her interview with Calley. And here he talks about personal responsibility. So let's go ahead and jump on into
No, but we
this.
don't like personal responsibility. No.
I know, but you know what?
Uh,
It's time to be adults. Do this.
wait, what is that?
Yeah, so I think there's obviously a personal responsibility element here where I think on the personal responsibility, we need to educate people, which is happening through your work, which is happening through podcasts, which is happening through books. And we need to speak more directly, I think. I mean, I think we kind of tiptoe around diet and exercise, and there's a big movement to kind of not be direct with parents about the types of food they're feeding their children. Somebody asked me recently, what would you say to a single mom, lower income, who's only able to afford ultra processed food at McDonald's for her kids? And I said, I'd say that she's poisoning her kids. It's like we have to speak honestly about what's happening on a bottoms up level. But my whole life, and I'm very clear about this, that Americans have a huge, problem, a huge albatross of the trillions of dollars of incentives that basically prop up our ultra processed food system through hundreds of billions of dollars of incentives a year that recommend ultra processed food and really incentivize a sedentary lifestyle from various government agencies. And then we have a $4.5 trillion healthcare system that profits when we're sick. So I do think clear communication and bottoms up empowerment, which is happening, is important. But why has this happened? Do people know better? Well, at some point, people should be able to trust the USDA, but the USDA says that 10% added sugar in a 2-year-old's diet is healthy. The USDA says that a diet 92% in ultra processed food is healthy. Do we trust our schools? We should, but schools sit kids down in a sedentary environment in a sunless room for 7 hours. It's a science experiment to make the kids go crazy. It's like our institutions fundamentally are letting down our metabolic health. And the problem is there's trillions of dollars of profit in hijacking our dopamine, frankly, hijacking our metabolic health for us to be sick, depressed, fearful, have our attention hijacked. That's all good things, but those are all bad things for metabolic health.
That's right. Oh man, yeah, you can make money off people's fear, off their depression, off their anxiety, off their chronic illnesses that they're getting from eating over processed foods. 92% of your diet can be processed foods, according to the USDA now. I wonder who
I'm doing good, man.
influenced them to say that.
Yeah, 95% of my food intake is processed food. All right, I love that processed food.
It'll start to hit you guys. Like, you might feel fine eating that stuff for the first, third to half of your life, but once you start to hit middle age, 40s, 50s, you're really going to start feeling the impacts. And if you're not already depressed or tired, lacking energy, any of that kind of stuff, anxiety, so on and so forth, there's already an issue.
Dude, I'm 35.
That
I'm
could be
tired,
solved.
depressed,
Yeah.
anxiety ridden, and
Yeah.
fat. It'll come at you. But the personal responsibility of, okay, so there's a weight between personal responsibility and ease of getting things. And I would love to eat good, healthy red meat and dark green vegetables and the brightest orange vegetables and the deepest reds that I can get. That is the most expensive stuff you could. And
Not if you buy it from the farmer's market. And actually, I buy dark greens all the time. They're not expensive.
but your farmers markets are only open for a certain amount of time throughout the year.
So, well, so you buy, but there's indoor ones too, and you stock up on what you need for the winter
Yeah.
and the fall.
Well, what if you don't have the space to put in the freezer to stock up on what you need? But if you,
You
don't have
can
the space,
still
you
get
know?
healthy greens
I know.
from the grocery store.
I guess what I'm just saying is,
but it's convenient. It's convenient for us to go into the gas station and
it's
get food.
hundreds of times easier to pick up the stuff that's in the center of your
Well, they talk
grocery
about that coming
store.
up here, and they've done studies where people, instead of going to fast food every night, actually go shopping once a week, and it takes about the same amount of time. We're just so used to the immediate access convenience. We're not used to planning ahead when we buy our food.
But I can tell you right now, it's shocking. Like even those little small carts, you fill up half of the top rack of the small cart.
The price of
That's
food going up
$75
is
freaking
an issue, and the
It's
inflation is a
$75
serious issue
right
right
off the
now.
bat.
Yeah, they're definitely making it hard for people to be healthy. But if you buy smart and you're not buying prepackaged, boxed processed foods, even the organic ones, and you're just buying straight up whole foods from the produce section, it is not that expensive. It's still doable, and you just got to just we got to take personal responsibility and go through the process of getting used to doing things a little bit differently. But it's actually not that hard, and you're going to feel a heck of a lot healthier
Yeah.
and happier too.
It's
So
not as hard as it seems.
no, and then
That's the
it
trick.
gets incredibly easy once you start eating this way, because then you suddenly do have more energy, and you're not as depressed, you're not as anxious, you're not looking for quick fixes anymore. You're already built up. You're feeling all right.
Yeah, and one good trick is, like, if you're shopping, just shop around the periphery of the grocery
Right.
store. So turn off into the vegetable section and all that stuff, and then you get the frozen vegetables and all that stuff, and then you get to your like meats and stuff.
Yeah.
And learn how to cook trash meat. Like your tough meats and all that stuff, because that's like, well, dude, nothing.
It's so easy to make a stew, right?
Yeah,
Throw
yeah.
some stew meat into the Instapot, and then
You
throw
may
in
not
some
have
vegetables,
steak, but you can still get
throw
red
in
meat.
some kale or whatever, and cook it
Yeah.
down. And
Collard greens
that-
opposed to kale. Sorry, I'm
Hey.
team collards.
That's all right. I'm down with collards too. Collards are great, but dark leafy greens are
Collards
excellent
are
for you.
cheap.
Start eating the rainbow of colors from the produce section and eat healthy meats. It's that simple. And it's going to cost. I mean, food in general already costs a heck of a lot of money. It's not that much of a difference, I think. And if we can get some support from the IRS once again, then we might be able to help people supplement. So let's jump on over to our next clip here, guys. What would be the ideal top-down change now? Looked at the bottom up, personal responsibility.
What would be the ideal top-down change if you could have your wish granted?
Yeah, stop recommending poisonous food. So we recommend sugar. As I said, the USDA is totally co-opted by the food industry. The standard of care, it makes no sense that the standard of care, if you're slightly pre-diabetic, is to immediately get on a drug. In Europe, they actually prescribe a keto diet and prescribe exercise and help fund that with medical dollars instead of drugs. So, in Europe, Ozempic isn't like really the drug at all for obesity. They have various lifestyle intervention programs. So we're just not getting the right advice. And it's not about drug or anti-drug. It's just like, and drugs, to be clear, might be useful or part of it's not a full anti-drug message, but 5 billion prescriptions last year in America it doesn't make sense, and it's not working. So just the recommendations, people listen to medical leaders, and we should have the standard of care for diabetes, heart disease, depression. It should follow the science. We should just be recommending what medically works best, which is often more lifestyle interventions, which we can incentivize. So that gets to number 2. It's stop recommending the wrong things and then stop incentivizing the wrong things. Again, 95% of the $4.5 trillion in healthcare is on interventions after we get sick. So there's a big incentive for people to get sick and then to make money off the interventions. And then hundreds of billions of dollars a year from various food subsidies go to ultra processed food, whether it's school lunch programs or food stamps or agriculture subsidies. We're propping up with subsidies the ultra processed food system when we should be investing in regenerative agriculture.
Yeah, well,
Yes.
you get more of what you subsidize and less of what you tax. So the IRS was involved earlier in this conversation, and well, we get the subsidies for corn oil and soy oil and
Yep.
oh man.
So now a little bit on Calley's book. His sister wrote a book and he helped, and it's called Good Energy. And they're going to talk on that a little bit now. It's our last clip of the night, guys.
The tactical part of the book makes the point that it's actually simple, and then makes very straightforward and very tactical shopping lists, frameworks for eating healthy, frameworks for exercise, frameworks for sleep. It's simple, but it just gives the information, gives the shopping list. But the chapter actually starts by talking about an accountability framework and going to the research and having accountability, having community, having people that are on the same journey to hold those standards, having people to check in with, an accountability buddy, having personalized coaching, somebody that knows you, somebody that knows your goals. It's vital. We actually say it's almost required if for long-term change. So I think it's a vital part of the puzzle. People say lifestyle interventions are hard. I think that's a very convenient thing for the medical system to say because everything's incentivized for them not to work. If we can really invest in personalized accountability tools, group tools, the research shows it's much more effective, the change. And then, what TrueMed's trying to do again is incentivize from medical dollars these actions too.
Yes. So let's take a look real fast here, guys, and look in the description of this video for an Amazon link to the book that Casey and Calley Means wrote together. Here's the book itself, Good Energy,
Good
the surprising
Energy.
connection between metabolism and limitless health. Most definitely worth checking out, fam. We got a
Yeah.
couple more charts here, a little bit more data that we can go through before we close out.
Yeah, this is just obesity charts.
Yeah.
So the first one is children's obesity, or actually, no, excuse me, U.S. obesity rates have tripled
Since the
on USA
1960s.
Facts.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just a quick chart, but there is obesity in pink, and then severe obesity
In
in
blue, dark blue.
Yeah, the dark blue, blackish color.
Yep.
And you can see the trend. And there has been funny business in the reporting of obese, or the definition of obesity, right? Yeah. So as you can see, it's going up and up and up and up. And there was a huge jump between 1980 and 1988, right?
Big time.
Slash 88, 94. And then another step up again back in 2000. I can tell you.
I mean, it doubled from, look at the 15% mark from 76 to 80 up to 99, 2000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And
So obesity rates have tripled since the 60s. And look at all pictures of people on the beach or videos of the 60s. And look at us now, guys. And again, this is not to disparage. This is not to look down on. This is coming from a place of care and concern. We are really letting ourselves go down a dark place if we keep giving in to this. These people are encouraging gluttony. They are accelerating chronic health conditions, and our lifespan is decreasing incredibly rapidly. Our children's health is getting more and more concerning and expensive for us as individuals, as families, and as a society. This is
that's
looking at
that's disturbing. So that's
the-
from 1960.
Yep.
And the next,
And this is from usafacts.org. There's
Yeah.
a link in the description. And now, let's look at
and
childhood.
this is Statista. So from 1988 up to 2018, yet again, a huge increase. This is unreal. So we're going from 6 to 11 years old, 11% to 19.3%. So that's almost a 10% jump. And then from 12 to 19 years old, we're going from 10.5% to 20.9%. That's a 10% jump. And this is children.
Yeah.
6 to 11 and 12. And there's a point in time in life as humans where the idea of an obese child was a fever dream of having enough wealth that you could raise a little fat kid. Most of the time, the healthy human body is not the fat body.
Yeah,
And
these are problems
like-
of affluent cultures and developing nations. You know,
Yeah.
it's insane that we have let this occur. Well, it's happened so quickly, and there's been so much money towards those government organizations that are supposed to protect our health that everything
Yeah.
is upside down.
Well, it is. And, their system obviously hasn't been working. This new system that, they have for what you should eat and what you should put in your body isn't working. Why do we keep participating in it?
Why do
Well, we know why they're doing it is because there's money to be made, but why are we doing it?
Yeah, we're not making any money off of this. We're
Why
getting nothing.
am I still
bad
participating in it?
health.
Why,
Yeah.
why am I eating like crap and drinking like crap and then taking the ibuprofen for when I feel like crap in the morning and then
This
taking
is what we've done our whole lives. It's habit, it's
right.
addiction, it's a lot of things that. But let's, I'm going to promise to you right now that I'm going to help you be accountable, and I hope that you will promise to help me be accountable.
Yeah, well,
Put
but
it out there,
I-
guys.
I'm gonna give you shit because you're gonna be like, "Why are you eating that?" And I'm like, "Cause it tastes good."
Let's do the same for one another, guys. We got to change the way we eat. We got to change the way we live. We got to change the way
Well,
we treat
and
each other because it's
so-
on us to do what we got to do to survive, as Tupac once said.
And so while we're talking
The
about
great sage, old Tupac.
what to do about this, is you can either grow your own food, and if you can't grow your own food, there's probably somebody that you can help set up a greenhouse so they can grow food, and you can be a
Mhm.
part of it, and they'll always grow more food than what they can eat. And if you can get a part of something that is making the food grow, whether it's like an urban garden environment or just help rake the old lady's garden out,
That's a great
in
point,
the
though, yeah.
spring, and
Yeah,
get
we,
there and then
we didn't even talk about growing
Yeah.
our own food.
well
and
that's
encouraging more sustainable agriculture and let's also look at how being a farmer is one of the most noble pursuits that one can engage in because you are helping your whole community be healthy.
And that's what Ninja Bat was saying on his last comment here was grow it yourself or come here and help build the greenhouse. I know him personally.
Hey.
Like, hey man, you want to build the greenhouse? I'm down. Just tell me where you need it, and don't only grow tomatoes. Everybody tomatoes, and there's too many when tomatoes are ready to go.
Plenty of tomatoes and eggs.
Yeah. But hey, get some chickens if you can, and if you can't, just spend the little extra dollar for the American-made stuff. You know where it came from.
Right. Or trade your produce for your neighbor's eggs. And, there are ways to do this, guys, and
Yeah.
we got to start somewhere. So I'm greatly appreciative of all of you that have been following this channel. We're working hard to grow the YouTube side of things. We are also on all of the podcast networks. So if you'd like to listen to Actuali Podcast, you can in fact also view us on Spotify, but you can listen to us on all podcast platforms, Apple, Google, Stitcher, so forth. So make sure to like, rate, subscribe to this podcast wherever you like to listen, and drop your comments here on our YouTube channel and everywhere else. That helps the algorithms out more than anything. We would love to be able to reach more people with what we're doing here, and we hope it's been of aid to all of you. Anything else this evening?
Well, okay. So no, but yes. Don't be afraid to dig into the stats and go in for yourself and look at these things. They may be traumatic, but I think it's important instead of relying on the authorities to make your decisions for you, just go look.
Check, double check, and watch these government representatives like hawks. That is our duty.
And you're gonna get mad, and that's okay. But don't do nothing stupid.
Right. Use that anger as fuel.
Yeah,
It's energy.
that's what it's for. That's what anger's for. It's to give you the fuel to act. Well, first you
Give
have
you the
to,
impetus to move.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and so you can use that as an impetus, as a launch platform, so to speak.
Well, you don't forge steel on a bonfire. You use coal and you heat it up in a contained area. So contain your anger, use it.
Channel that key.
Because dude, this like looking through this stuff is just pissing me off.
Channel that key properly.
Yeah, word.
We love you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Meaning Making 101 here on Actuali Podcast. Once again, if you'd like to learn more, check the links in the description. Look up Calley Means. Get his book, Good Energy. I'm going to get it. It looks great. And yeah, you know, let's encourage one another to change this world from the inside out ever more. I've been Chris.
I've been DJ.
And we will see you guys next time.